Welcome to This Explainer. Let's just jump right in. Today, we're unpacking those sensational headlines about a fast food parasite that literally swept the nation. We're going to peel back the layers of this story to find the very real and honestly kind of startling truth about our produce supply chain. Because what starts as a fast food nightmare actually reveals a massive structural vulnerability in exactly how our food gets to our plates. So, if you were anywhere near the internet recently, you probably saw something like this viral Reddit headline. It completely made it look like Taco Bell was the sole culprit behind this massive, explosive outbreak of gastrointestinal illness. And of course, the internet was super quick to point fingers and make jokes. But the reality beneath the surface? It's actually much more interesting. When public health agencies started really digging into the data, the story shifted entirely away from the restaurant itself. The FDA investigation quickly revealed that the restaurant chain wasn't the source at all. No, they were actually the victim of a much larger issue originating from a single independent farm down in central Mexico. Public perception was entirely focused on the end user, the restaurant serving the meal. But the actual root cause? It was buried deep within this highly centralized, massive supplier network.
Okay, Section 1, the real source, Taylor Farms.
The real detective work here began with Michigan public health officials. They did an ingredient-level analysis on the meals eaten by 190 of the outbreak cases, trying to find that one common denominator among all these sick people. And boom, there it was. A staggering 90% of those interviewed reported eating iceberg lettuce. This specific ingredient was basically the Trojan horse, carrying the pathogen straight into people's homes and fast food orders. And guys, this is where the plot really thickens. As observant consumers and industry insiders quickly pointed out, the implicated supplier, Taylor Farms de Mexico, doesn't just sell to one single taco chain. Not even close. They distribute this exact same lettuce to dozens of massive retailers and restaurants across the country. We're talking heavyweights like Walmart, Sysco, Costco, Trader Joe's, Kroger, even McDonald's and Chipotle. Suddenly, this wasn't just some isolated fast food incident. It was a full-blown systemic supply chain breach. It's actually kind of ironic, because Taco Bell took the massive media hit purely because they were the first ones to act. The moment they identified a potential issue with the ingredient, they rapidly dropped the supplier and removed the lettuce nationwide within 24 hours. And this was way before public health agencies had even finished their investigations. Meanwhile, Taylor Farms later announced they were voluntarily removing the iceberg lettuce sourced from central Mexico. So Taco Bell's swift, responsible action practically guaranteed they'd be the ones roasted in the initial headlines. To really put the sheer scale of this distribution into perspective, consider this. The initial CDC alert only mentioned an outbreak in 5 Midwestern states. But the parasite-linked lettuce, it was actually sent to a staggering 27 states. That is more than half the country. It perfectly highlights just how quickly a single point of failure in our modern agricultural system can spread nationwide before anyone even realizes there's a problem.
Moving on to Section 2. Meet the parasite, cyclospora.
The specific pathogen we're talking about is Cyclospora cayetanensis. It's this incredibly resilient, microscopic parasite notorious for causing a severe intestinal illness known as cyclosporiasis. People get infected simply by ingesting it through contaminated food or drinking water. And let me tell you, it poses some really unique challenges for both the patients and the scientists trying to track it down. If you are unfortunate enough to catch this thing, you're absolutely going to know it. The symptoms are incredibly unpleasant. We're talking watery diarrhea, profound fatigue, cramping, and just a total loss of appetite. And perhaps the most alarming detail is that without proper treatment, these debilitating symptoms can last anywhere from a few days to well over a month. It is a grueling ordeal that totally disrupts your life. But here's the real kicker, and what makes stopping this parasite so insanely difficult. The incubation period can take up to 2 full weeks. Just imagine trying to remember exactly what brand of bagged salad or which specific fast food item you ate 14 days ago. By the time someone gets sick, goes to the doctor, gets a test, and finally talks to health officials, that contaminated food is long gone in the trash, and their memory of eating it is incredibly hazy.
All right, Section 3. Why are cases rising?
Because this isn't just an isolated freak accident. The historical data really tells a story here. Domestic cases of cyclospora infections in the U.S. have been aggressively climbing. Back in 2016, we saw 537 cases. Just 1 year later, that number more than doubled to over 1,000. And by 2023, we hit nearly 3,000 reported cases.
The prevalence of this parasite has an absolutely unmistakable upward trajectory.
So what's actually driving this huge surge? Well, experts point to two main factors. First, we're just getting a lot better at finding it. The growing use of advanced diagnostic tests makes clinical identification much more likely today. But second, and this is the scary part, experts warn that this also reflects a genuinely concerning upward trajectory. We're trending toward this parasite simply becoming endemic, basically a permanent fixture in our food supply. Naturally, this growing threat is severely straining our national foodborne illness surveillance system, which leads to some incredibly confusing public data. For instance, by mid-July, the CDC reported about 1,600 national cases, factoring in a 6-week reporting lag. But meanwhile, the Michigan Department of Health alone was tracking over 4,300 cases just in their state. When the federal numbers drastically lag behind real-time state reporting, it creates a ton of uncertainty and really damages consumer confidence. Which brings us to Section 4, How to Protect Yourself. The most surprising takeaway from all of this absolutely blew my mind. Simply washing your lettuce? It's not enough, because washing alone literally cannot guarantee the removal of the cyclospora parasite. The CDC actually advises that you have to cook the produce to a temperature of at least 158 degrees Fahrenheit to kill it. And let's be real, cooking iceberg lettuce isn't exactly standard practice for a side salad, which is exactly why this pathogen is so incredibly effective at slipping right past our kitchen defenses. Also, if you do happen to experience these severe gastrointestinal symptoms, you absolutely must be your own health advocate. You need to explicitly request a test for cyclospora from your doctor. A lot of standard routine tests might miss this specific parasite entirely, which could leave you suffering without a proper diagnosis or any treatment. Which leaves us with one final vital thought to chew on. As single, independent farms in central Mexico supply dozens of America's biggest retail and restaurant brands, just 1 point of contamination can trigger a massive national event. So is our under-resourced public health infrastructure truly equipped to keep up with the sheer speed and scale of our modern food supply chain? Or are we just destined to constantly react to the next outbreak? Definitely something to think about next time you see a fast food chain taking all the blame in the headlines. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and stay curious.